Daniel Ward had worked in many places across the human-alien colony worlds, but nothing felt as heavy on his heart as the outer district of Virene 9. People here, both human and alien, lived in broken shelters made of metal sheets and old plastic boards. The air smelled of dust, and even the sunlight looked weaker as it passed through the layers of smoke drifting from nearby factories. Daniel came here every day because he believed food and kindness could reach places where politics never did. He carried a large metal box filled with small food packets, each designed to last a family a day. He always greeted everyone with a warm smile, even when the people around him barely had the energy to respond. Some aliens simply nodded. Some didn't say anything at all. The important thing, Daniel believed, was that someone kept coming back to help them. By midday, Daniel decided to take a short break. He sat on a low step beside an abandoned shop and opened a food packet for himself. He didn't mind eating simple ration meals. He was used to their taste. Not good, not bad, just fuel for the body. As he raised the packet to take his first bite, he felt a sudden pull. The packet slipped out of his hands, and before he understood what had happened, a small figure darted away. His eyes caught a glimpse of her, a tiny alien girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Her skin was a soft shade of blue, but not the healthy kind, more like the pale color of someone who hadn't eaten well in a long time. Her clothes were too large for her small frame, and her feet were bare. The food packet was pressed tightly to her chest as she ran, her shoulders shaking with fear. Daniel stood up slowly. He wasn't angry, just surprised. The girl's speed did not match her thin, fragile body. She looked like she should barely be able to walk, yet she ran as if the world behind her was collapsing. He called out gently, "Hey, wait, I'm not going to hurt you." But the girl didn't even look back. She disappeared behind a row of metal containers used as makeshift homes. Daniel's first thought was to let her go. It was just one packet of food. He could open another, but something inside him didn't feel right. He had seen hungry children before, and he understood hunger could make them do desperate things. But this girl's eyes, those large, frightened eyes, held something more than desperation. They held guilt, they held fear, and they held a kind of urgency that didn't match simple hunger. Daniel took a breath and followed her. He didn't run. He walked calmly, keeping his steps quiet so he wouldn't scare her even more. The alleyways in this part of the district were narrow and uneven, with small puddles of old rainwater catching the last bits of light. Rusty pipes hung from walls, dripping slowly. From far away, the hum of machines and distant voices blended together into a low background noise. Daniel turned the first corner and saw a small blue hand gripping the edge of a door before it closed. The girl had slipped inside a broken warehouse, one that Daniel had always assumed was empty. He hesitated. Following a child into an abandoned building didn't feel right, but leaving her alone didn't feel right either. She looked far too weak to be wandering here. Something was wrong. He had felt it from the moment she ran. He stepped inside. The warehouse was dim, lit only by a few cracks in the ceiling. Dust floated in the beams of light like tiny stars. Old crates and metal scraps lay scattered everywhere. Daniel walked slowly, not wanting to startle the girl. He expected to hear her footsteps or breathing, but the building was almost silent. Then he heard it, the soft rustle of fabric. He followed the sound toward the back of the warehouse, where a small space had been formed using old curtains and wooden boards. It was more like a tiny room, built inside the warehouse with whatever materials someone could find. Daniel didn't know who lived here, but he knew it wasn't someone with resources or protection. He approached the entrance of the makeshift room and stopped. He didn't want to barge in. He didn't want the girl to think he was angry or chasing her, so he gently lowered himself to his knees and spoke softly. "I'm not here to take anything from you. I just want to make sure you're okay." No answer. He waited, giving her time to calm down. After a few quiet seconds, he heard the faintest whisper, so soft he barely recognized it as a voice. "Please, don't take the food." Her voice was trembling, and the words were more plea than speech. Daniel slowly peeked inside. The girl was kneeling beside someone lying on the floor. Blankets were folded under the person's head, and several pieces of cloth were stacked nearby, probably used as makeshift pillows. The small room smelled of damp fabric and faint herbs. Someone had tried to keep it clean, despite having almost nothing. The tiny girl was holding the food packet in both hands, trying to open it with shaking fingers. She looked up at Daniel, her eyes wide with fear, expecting him to grab the packet or scold her. But Daniel's attention went to the figure on the floor. A woman, an older alien, perhaps the girl's mother, lay there, her skin duller than her daughter's. Her breathing was shallow, her body too still. She wasn't unconscious, but she was not fully awake either. Her eyes barely opened, but when they did, there was exhaustion in them, not fear. The girl whispered again, "She needs to eat. She hasn't eaten since yesterday." Daniel's heart tightened. Now everything made sense. The girl didn't steal food because she was greedy or mischievous. She stole it because she was trying to save her mother. Her small hands trembled not from guilt, but from the weight of responsibility no child should carry alone. Daniel stepped forward slowly. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're not in trouble." The girl hugged the food packet tighter, ready to protect it with her whole body if needed. Daniel raised both his hands a little, showing he meant no harm. "I didn't come to take it back," he assured her. "I only followed you because I was worried." The girl blinked at him, unsure whether to believe him or not. The warehouse was quiet again, as if holding its breath. Daniel took a seat on the floor near the doorway to show he wasn't a threat. He didn't move forward, didn't reach for the packet, didn't rush her. He simply waited, calm, patient, gentle. That was when the girl finally relaxed. Her shoulders loosened a little, and she returned her focus to opening the food packet. She tore it slightly and gently tried to feed her mother. The woman's eyes moved weakly toward Daniel. There was no anger there, only worry for her daughter. Daniel offered a small smile. "She's very brave," he said quietly. "She wants to help you." The woman's lips moved a little, forming something like a faint, grateful smile. The girl kept feeding her mother slowly, piece by piece, whispering little words of encouragement. Daniel didn't interrupt. He watched quietly, letting the moment unfold. He knew one thing clearly now. This wasn't theft. This was survival, a child fighting to keep her family alive in a world that had forgotten them. And deep in his heart, Daniel also knew something else. This was just the beginning. He would not walk away from this girl or her mother, not now. Not ever. Daniel stayed seated near the doorway of the small makeshift room, giving the girl and her mother space. He didn't want to scare them or make them feel judged. Instead, he simply watched with quiet concern as the girl fed her mother tiny bites of the ration meal. The mother tried her best to eat, but even lifting her head seemed difficult. Her breathing was slow, and each movement looked like it required great effort. The girl gently wiped her mother's mouth with a piece of cloth, her small hands trembling with worry. Daniel could see how tired the girl was, too. Her arms looked thin, her movements weak, and her eyes carried the weight of responsibility far beyond her age. She kept glancing at him, as if expecting him to suddenly change his mind and demand the food back. Every time their eyes met, she looked away quickly. After a few minutes, Daniel spoke softly. "How long has your mother been unwell?" The girl hesitated, unsure if she should answer. Finally, she whispered, "Many days." Daniel's heart felt heavier. Many days meant they had been struggling alone for a long time. Is it just the two of you? He asked gently. The girl nodded without looking up. Yes, only us. He could see the fear in her. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of losing the only family she had. Daniel wanted to ask more questions, but he didn't want to overwhelm her. Instead, he took a slow breath and looked around the small room. It was obvious they had tried to make it a home. Pieces of cloth were neatly folded in one corner. A few broken containers held small belongings, tiny stones, a handmade bracelet, maybe something meaningful. It was clear they valued whatever little they had. The girl finally looked up again, her voice soft. "You're not angry?" Daniel shook his head gently. "No. I understand why you took the food." Her eyes widened slightly, surprised by his kindness. Many people in this district would have scolded her or worse, but Daniel was different. He believed kindness could change someone's whole world. "Thank you," she whispered, almost too quietly to hear. Daniel smiled softly. "What is your name?" She hesitated again, then answered, "Leary." It suited her, short, simple, gentle, like she was. "And your mother?" Daniel asked. Leary looked at the woman with affection. "Her name is Riva." Daniel nodded slowly. He wanted to ask how long they had lived here, but he could already guess the answer. Too long in too difficult a place. Riva opened her eyes slightly, looking at Daniel. There was gratitude in her tired expression. She tried to speak, but her voice came out faint and unclear. Leary quickly held her hand. "It's okay, Mama. You can rest," she whispered. Daniel leaned forward just enough to be heard, but not enough to intrude. "Riva, I'm here to help. I won't take anything from you." Riva blinked slowly, acknowledging his words. Her eyes softened, showing she understood he meant no harm. Daniel turned his attention back to Leary. "Is there any other food you have? Or water?" Leary shook her head. "We only had a little water left, and Mama couldn't eat yesterday. I tried to find something." Daniel felt a deep ache inside. The girl had been caring for her mother with almost no resources. She must have been scared every minute, knowing her mother was depending on her. No child should feel that kind of pressure. "Leary," he said gently, "why didn't you come to the distribution center earlier?" Leary looked down, her fingers twisting the edge of her oversized shirt. "Sometimes humans don't like us, and the guards don't let us near without papers." Daniel understood immediately. This district had many rules, some fair, many unfair. Without proper identification, aliens like Leary and her mother were often turned away or ignored. They became invisible in a place already forgotten by most. That explained everything. She wasn't just hungry. She was afraid to ask for help. Daniel shifted slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. He wanted to let her know she wasn't alone anymore. "Leary, listen. You did something brave. You tried to help your mother the only way you could." Leary's eyes filled with emotion. She blinked quickly, holding back tears. "I didn't want to steal. I just didn't know what else to do." Daniel reached out slowly but stopped halfway, giving her the choice. "I understand, and you don't have to do it anymore. You can ask me for help. I'll make sure you have food." For the first time since he entered the warehouse, Leary allowed herself a small, timid smile. "Thank you," she whispered again. Riva's hand moved slightly, as if trying to reach for her daughter. Leary helped her mother adjust her position. Daniel watched them, thinking how strong their bond was. Despite the hardships, they stayed together. Daniel felt something inside him shift. Helping people was his job, but with Leary and Riva, it felt more personal, more important. He didn't know why, but he felt connected to them already. "I'm going to bring more food," Daniel said softly, "and clean water." Leary's eyes widened in worry. "Will you come back? Really?" Daniel nodded firmly. Yes, I promise. Leary looked relieved. She exhaled slowly as if letting go of a fear she had been carrying for too long. But before Daniel stood up to leave, he remembered something. Do you mind if I take a closer look at your mother? Just to see how she's doing? Leary hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Daniel moved closer, careful to keep his actions gentle. He wasn't a doctor, but he had learned basic medical checks during his relief training. Riva's skin was warm to the touch. Too warm. Her breathing was slow and she looked exhausted. It didn't seem like a simple cold or hunger. She needed proper medical help. But Daniel knew that without identification papers, medical centers would turn them away. Rules were strict in this district. He didn't want to scare Leary with that truth. He kept his voice calm. Your mother needs rest and food, but she also needs a doctor. Leary's small body stiffened. They won't help us. They said we don't have permission. Daniel felt a wave of frustration, but he kept his expression soft. Let me try. I know people. Maybe I can talk to someone. Leary looked uncertain but hopeful. You will try? For us? Daniel nodded. Yes, you both deserve help. Something eased in her expression, something like trust. He stood up slowly. I'll be back soon. Leary quickly said, Please don't tell anyone about this place. Daniel shook his head gently. I won't. Your secret is safe with me. She relaxed once more, and he stepped out of the small room. As he walked through the warehouse, he couldn't stop thinking about them. How long they had survived alone. How hard it must have been for Leary to care for her mother. How much strength it took to keep going. Outside, the sunlight felt warmer. The world looked the same, but something inside Daniel had changed. He had found two people who needed him more than anyone else, and he knew he wouldn't turn away. As he walked back toward the distribution center to gather food and supplies, one thought stayed with him. This wasn't just a simple act of kindness. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Daniel returned to the warehouse carefully, carrying a small bag filled with ration meals, soft bread packets, fresh water, and a few basic supplies he had gathered quietly. He didn't want to attract attention. If the guards saw him helping a family without identification papers, they might ask questions or try to interfere, and Daniel wasn't ready to let anyone disturb Leary and her mother. When he stepped inside the warehouse again, the sunlight from the higher cracks made the dust sparkle like tiny floating stars. He walked toward the small room made of fabric and wooden boards. Before he reached the entrance, he heard Leary humming softly, a gentle melody almost like a lullaby. It was the sound of a child trying her best to comfort someone she loved. Daniel paused, giving her a moment. Then he spoke lightly. Leary, I'm back. The humming stopped, and a second later Leary peeked out with cautious eyes. When she saw the bag in his hand, her expression softened. She stepped back to let him in. You came back fast, she said quietly, as if surprised someone kept a promise to her. Daniel smiled. I said I would. Inside, Riva was resting with her eyes closed. She looked less tense than before, as if Leary's care had given her a bit more strength. Leary rushed to her side immediately, holding her hand. Daniel placed the supplies gently on the floor. I brought food, water, and some herbs that might help a little. These are simple things, but they can give her some comfort. Leary nodded, grateful. She opened a water bottle and helped her mother take a few sips. Riva blinked slowly in recognition, her gaze shifting between her daughter and Daniel. Daniel knelt down again, not too close. How is she doing? She is still tired, Leary whispered. But she is warmer now. Daniel knew warmer wasn't necessarily good. Fever made bodies warm too. But he kept his worry inside. He needed Leary to feel hope, not fear. I'll try to get someone who can help her more, Daniel said gently. But it may take time. Leary lowered her head. People don't help us. They say we need papers. Daniel sighed lightly. I know, and it's not fair. But sometimes good people can be found even in places with too many rules. She looked up again, her eyes full of a quiet hope she didn't want to lose. Will they listen to you? Daniel gave a small, confident smile. I'll make sure they do. Her shoulders relaxed a bit. She sat beside her mother, carefully opening one of the soft bread packets. She held it out for Riva, who took small bites with slow movements. Daniel watched them, feeling a deep respect. Even in such difficult conditions, their love for each other made the small room feel warm. After a moment, Daniel asked softly, Leary, how long have you lived here in the warehouse? Leary hugged her knees slightly. Since we came to this colony. We came with many others, but some left. Some found places, some didn't stay. Daniel nodded slowly. And your father? Leary's gaze lowered even more. He left to find work. He said he would come back when he earned enough to get us a safe place. But he didn't come back. She didn't sound angry or sad, just accepting, as if life had taught her not to expect too much. Daniel's heart softened even more. That must have been hard. She shrugged slightly. Mama says he tried his best. And it's okay. We are together. Daniel admired her strength. Even with very little, she held on to kindness. That kind of spirit was rare. He glanced at Riva, whose breathing was still shallow but steady. He wished he could take her to a medical center right now, but he knew the truth. Without identification, they would be turned away at the entrance. Daniel needed to think carefully. Leary, Daniel said softly, I want to know more about what happened when you tried to go to the distribution areas. Did someone tell you that you couldn't enter? Leary nodded. The guard said the area is only for people with papers. They said we should go to the registration office. Daniel rubbed the side of his forehead. Did you go? We tried, Leary whispered. But the office was closed 2 times, and the other time they said we needed 2 forms we didn't have. Daniel let out a slow, steady breath. He had heard of these things before. Sometimes rules were made to help organize people, but sometimes rules pushed people into places of desperation. Leary and Riva had fallen through the cracks of a system that didn't see them clearly. Leary looked at him again. Were you angry when I took your food? Daniel shook his head gently. No. I only felt surprised. And then I felt worried. Worried, she repeated softly. Yes, he said, because your eyes looked like you were scared and alone, and no child should feel that way. Leary blinked slowly. She was not used to hearing such words. Thank you, she whispered. Daniel stayed with them for a while, helping Leary mix the herbs into warm water and watching Riva sip the slowly prepared drink. The simple tea might help calm her fever a little. When Riva finished, she rested again. Her breathing steady and soft. Leary looked relieved. She sleeps better when someone is here. Daniel smiled. Then I'll stay a little longer. They sat in silence for a few moments. The warehouse, normally quiet, felt peaceful for once. After a while, Leary spoke again. Daniel, can I ask something? Of course, he said gently. Why are you helping us so much? Daniel took a moment to think. He wanted to answer honestly, without sounding dramatic or making empty promises. He finally said, because I saw someone who needed help. And when you see someone struggling, you don't walk away, not if you can help. But many people walk away, Leary whispered. Daniel nodded softly. That's true, but we can choose to be different. Leary looked down at her hands. I want to be like that. I want to help people too, when I grow older. Daniel felt warmth spread through his chest. You already do. You helped your mother with everything you had. You're stronger than you think. Leary smiled shyly, a small smile, but a real one. Daniel stood up after some time. "I'll come again soon. I need to talk to someone about your mother, someone who can help us." Leary immediately stood too, her eyes filled with both trust and worry. "Will they be kind to Mama?" "I will choose someone who is kind," Daniel said firmly. "Someone who listens." She nodded slowly, believing him. Daniel took a final look around the small space. He noticed something he hadn't seen before, a small drawing on one of the wooden boards, a child's drawing done in faded colors. It showed a little girl holding hands with her mother. The picture was simple, but full of love. "Did you make this?" Daniel asked softly. "Yes," Leary answered, looking a little shy. "I drew it when Mama was feeling better." "It's beautiful," Daniel said. "You're talented." Leary looked at the drawing with quiet pride. Daniel walked toward the exit. "Keep the door closed. Rest. I'll come back soon." "Please be careful," Leary said. "Sometimes the guards walk near here." Daniel nodded. "Don't worry. I won't let anything happen." As he stepped out of the warehouse and felt the warm sun hit his face, a clear thought formed inside him. Helping Leary and Riva was no longer just part of his work. It was something he felt deeply responsible for, something personal, something meaningful. He didn't know yet how he would convince the officials or how he would bypass the endless rules. But he knew one thing very clearly. He would not let Leary and her mother suffer alone again. He would find a way, no matter how complicated the path ahead might be. Daniel walked toward the center of the district with careful steps. The roads were dusty, the buildings worn out, and people moved with tired eyes. Yet his mind wasn't focused on any of that. His thoughts were on Leary and Riva, two lives hidden inside a forgotten warehouse, depending on him more than anyone ever had. He knew exactly who he needed to talk to. There was only one person in the district who sometimes ignored unnecessary rules and listened to her heart more than official orders. Dr. Mira Halden, a human doctor working in a small clinic near the distribution area. She had helped Daniel many times before, and he trusted her more than anyone here. But even she followed certain rules. And bringing an unregistered alien patient to her clinic might create problems. Still, Daniel needed to try. When he reached the clinic, he found Dr. Mira sorting medical supplies on a counter near the entrance. She was in her mid-30s, gentle in the way she spoke, firm in the decisions she made. Her hair was tied back, and her coat looked older from years of long workdays. Mira noticed him immediately. "Daniel, you look worried. What happened?" Daniel took a slow breath. "I found someone who needs help. 2 aliens, actually. A mother and her young daughter." Mira paused her work. "Are they injured?" "No," Daniel said. "Just weak. The mother is very sick. She can barely move. The daughter is taking care of her alone." Mira's expression softened. "And you want me to check the mother?" "Yes," Daniel replied, his voice steady. "But there's something you should know." Mira raised an eyebrow gently. "I'm listening." "They don't have identification papers." Mira sighed quietly, sadness passing through her eyes. "Daniel, you know the policy. Without papers, the clinic can't officially treat them." "I know," Daniel said, lowering his voice. "But this isn't about rules. This is about a child trying to keep her mother alive. They've been living inside an old warehouse for weeks. They're scared to come out. They're scared to ask for help." Mira felt the weight of his words. She walked around the counter and stood closer. "Is the mother's condition serious?" Daniel nodded. "Very. And the daughter? She's doing everything alone. She's just a child." Mira closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression had changed. There was resolve in her gaze. "Take me to them." Daniel felt relief wash through him. He hadn't realized how tense he was until that moment. "Thank you, Mira." "I'm not doing this for the rules," Mira said softly. "I'm doing it because no child should carry a burden like that." She packed a small medical bag, filled it with basic medicines, nutrient packets, and a portable scanner. Then she followed Daniel out of the clinic. The walk to the warehouse took nearly 20 minutes. Mira looked around as they passed through the quieter areas of the district. "This part of town, it hasn't been maintained at all," she said sadly. "No one pays attention to it," Daniel replied. "Many families stay hidden here." Mira shook her head gently. "They deserve better." When they reached the warehouse, Daniel knocked softly on the metal door. "Leary, it's me." There was silence for a moment. Then the door opened just a little and Leary peeked out. When she saw Daniel, her face brightened. But then she noticed Mira behind him and froze. Daniel knelt down so he could look at her at eye level. "It's okay, Leary. This is Dr. Mira. She's very kind. She wants to help your mother." Leary looked uncertain. "Will she take Mama away?" "No," Daniel said softly. "She won't take her anywhere. She will only help her feel better." Mira also stepped forward gently. "Hello, Leary. I promise I'm here only to help. Nothing else." Leary studied her face carefully. Her eyes were filled with protective worry. Finally, she opened the door wider. "Okay, you can come in." They entered the warehouse quietly. Mira looked around, the broken crates, the dust, the dim light, and her heart softened even more. When she reached the small room inside, she saw Riva lying on the cloth-covered floor, breathing slowly. Mira approached with gentle steps. "Hello, Riva. I'm Mira. I'm here to help you." Riva opened her eyes weakly. For a moment, fear flickered in them. But when she saw Leary holding her hand, she relaxed. Mira knelt beside her and began a careful examination. She checked Riva's temperature, listened to her breathing, and gently pressed her fingers against Riva's wrist to check her pulse. Her expression grew serious, but not hopeless. Leary watched every movement anxiously. "Is she okay?" she whispered. Mira smiled reassuringly. "She's tired, very tired. And she needs proper food and rest. But the good news is, I think we can help her recover." Leary exhaled deeply, relief filling her eyes. Mira continued, "She has a fever and is very weak because she hasn't eaten enough. Her body is trying very hard to stay strong, but she needs more support." Daniel listened carefully, wanting to understand everything. Mira reached into her medical bag and pulled out a small bottle. "This will help with the fever, and these nutrient drinks will help her regain her strength slowly, but she'll need someone to check on her every day." Leary immediately said, "I can do that." Mira smiled. "I know you can. You've been doing so much already, but Daniel and I will help too." Daniel nodded. "I'll come every day with food and clean water." Leary's eyes brightened again. Mira helped Riva take the fever medicine and then showed Leary how to mix the nutrient drink properly. Leary paid close attention, her small hands carefully copying every movement Mira made. She didn't want to miss a single instruction. After a while, Riva seemed calmer. Her breathing became more steady, and she opened her eyes more fully. She looked at Daniel and Mira with gratitude. Mira smiled softly at her. "You're strong, and your daughter loves you very much." Riva's fingers gently squeezed Leary's hand. Daniel sat down beside Leary. "I'm glad we came early," he said. "Your mother will get better with the right care." Leary nodded, but her face carried another worry. "Will people be mad that you helped us without papers?" Mira and Daniel exchanged a glance. Mira answered first. "Sometimes kindness is more important than rules," Daniel added gently. "We'll be careful, and we won't let anyone trouble you." Leary looked relieved. She trusted them now, fully. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe easier. After some time, Mira packed up her kit. Before leaving, she spoke softly to Daniel. She'll recover, but slowly. They need support. Consistent support. Daniel nodded. I'll give them that. As they walked out of the warehouse, Mira said, Daniel, I'm proud of you. Many people would have walked away. Daniel shook his head. I couldn't, not after seeing them. Mira smiled warmly. Good, because they need someone exactly like you. Daniel looked back at the warehouse door. Inside, Leary was helping her mother sip warm water. Their small world was fragile, but now it wasn't lonely. He took a deep breath. Helping them was no longer a simple act. It was a promise he intended to keep with his entire heart. And he knew this moment was only the beginning of a much bigger journey ahead.